Have you ever heard of a mirror that didn't show your reflection, but someone else's? In a quiet fishing village deep in ancient Nigeria's Niger Delta, a poor man once pulled a strange object from the depths of the river, a mirror that whispered at night, a mirror that showed him a woman who wasn't there. That woman, it turns out, wasn't human. They say he was never the same again. This is the forgotten story of a man who fell in love with a water spirit, Mami Wata, the goddess of mystery and temptation, and how one small act of desperation opened a gateway between worlds. This myth may sound like fantasy, but its echoes can still be heard in songs, in shrines by the water, and in the haunted eyes of fishermen who refused to cast their nets too deep. And it all began in a forbidden part of the river. So, sit back, because this is Africa Unveiled. Before we dive in, I know many of you are watching from around the world, united by a love for Africa. Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. I'll be in the comments engaging with you. And if you're enjoying the content, a like and subscription would truly mean the world to me. All right, let's get back to the video. Otu was the kind of village where time drifted like mist on the river. Located along the sinuous creeks of the Niger Delta, it was a small riverside settlement nestled among mangrove trees and humming with the quiet rhythm of fishing life. Children played barefoot in the shallows, old women smoked fish under thatched shelters, and the men, the fishermen, rose with the tides, their canoes slicing silently through the water as they cast nets passed down through generations. But Otu had its rules, ancient ones. The elders warned every new generation about the 3 forbidden zones of the river system. These were dark, winding offshoots of the main creek, where the waters never settled and birds refused to fly overhead. They were marked only by silence. No frogs, no splashes, not even the whisper of the wind. Around evening fires, the old men would say, "The spirits live deep, where light does not reach. If your net touches their home, they will not forgive. Fish where men fish. Leave the rest to the gods." Among those who listened was Tari, a humble fisherman in his early 40s, with weather-worn hands and deep lines around his eyes. He had a sick wife, 2 hungry children, and a boat that leaked more than it floated. His catches had grown small. The fish had moved elsewhere, or perhaps the spirits were angry. Tari was not a fool, but desperation makes men gamble with the unseen. One misty morning, before the sun had even broken through the trees, Tari pushed his canoe out alone. He rowed past the usual bends, deeper and further than he ever had before, past the 2nd forbidden zone, and into the 3rd. The water was dark there. Still, it reflected nothing. Even the trees seemed to lean away from it. Tari muttered a quiet prayer to his ancestors and cast his net. No fish fought against it. But when he pulled the net back in, his breath caught. Nestled in the net, tangled in old reeds, was a mirror. But not like any he had ever seen. It was oval, framed with twisting silver and coral beads, and polished so brightly it shimmered even in the fog. And in that shimmer, he saw her. A woman's face, impossibly beautiful. Her eyes silver like river stones, her lips the color of hibiscus petals. Her hair floated around her like underwater silk, blue-black, swaying with a life of its own. The image wasn't a reflection. It didn't move when he did. She looked directly at him. He blinked. It was gone. But that night, as he tried to sleep, he heard whispers in his hut, soft and lilting, like water trickling over smooth stones. They came from the mirror, now tucked under a mat in the corner. The voice whispered his name. Tari. He opened his eyes. There was no one there, only the sound of water, dripping where no water should be. The next night, the voice came again, and the next. The next evening, under a curtain of soft rain, the whispers from the mirror grew stronger. They no longer sounded distant. They felt present, like someone breathing just behind him. Tari sat up in the dark, candle flickering low beside him. His wife and children slept in the far corner of the hut, curled together under a raffia mat. He crept to the corner where he had hidden the mirror beneath a piece of cloth and slowly unwrapped it. The woman's face was there again, clearer now, as if she had moved closer. And then she spoke. "You called me." Tari stumbled back in fright, heart hammering against his ribs. But the voice wasn't angry. It was soft, gentle, enchanting. And when he blinked, she was no longer inside the mirror. She was in his hut, dripping water onto the floor, standing barefoot just a few steps away, her skin glistening like moonlight on the river. Her eyes shimmered like mercury, her hair falling in thick, wet ropes down her back. She wore jewelry made of shells, bones, and pearls, and her dress shimmered gold and green like fish scales in the light. She was impossibly beautiful and terrifying in her stillness. "I am the one they warn you of," she said, voice smooth as silk, "but I am not cruel. I come to those who are lost." Tari could not speak. The woman stepped closer and placed a cool, wet hand on his cheek. "You are hungry. You are afraid. Let me help." Then, as quietly as she had arrived, she faded back into mist, and the hut fell into silence. The next morning, Tari woke early, convinced it had been a dream, until he saw the pile of gold coins beside the mirror. Coins he had never seen before, old and foreign, heavy in his palm. And that was only the beginning. Over the next few days, Tari's life began to transform. He found rare, fat fish caught in his nets without effort. His wife, who had been bedridden with a fever for weeks, was suddenly well after he boiled herbs left by his bedside, herbs he hadn't placed there. The children laughed again. They had food, warmth, and the glimmer of hope. And always at night, she returned. Mami Wata. She never called herself that, but Tari knew who she was. The goddess of water, wealth, seduction, and secrets. Her name had been spoken in stories by the firelight, half feared, half worshipped. She lived between the world of men and the world beneath the water, appearing only to those she chose. She whispered to him about hidden places beneath the waves, where coral palaces glowed with bioluminescent light and drums beat in silence, where he could be more than just a man. He could be a king. But she began to ask for things. Nothing large at first. His time, his attention. Then came the secrets. "Tell me what your wife dreams of. What frightens your children? What lies have you told your neighbors?" He shared everything, willingly, enchanted. He began to lie to his wife, slipping out at night, claiming early fishing trips, sneaking to the riverbank just to see her reflection and hear her voice. The mirror, now kept hidden in a cloth-wrapped basket, never left his side. He stopped going to the village square. His friends noticed the change. And then, one evening, he tried to hide the mirror beneath a pot of smoked fish when his wife nearly found it. That night, the mirror cracked. A thin fracture, jagged like lightning, snaked down the glass, and the woman in the reflection looked displeased. The next morning, he saw water on the floor again, though it hadn't rained. And from that day forward, dreams began to bleed into reality. He would hear her voice while walking through the market, see flickers of blue-black hair between trees. He touched the mirror once and felt cold water rush into his lungs, gasping for air though he was on dry land. The barrier was fading, and Mami Wata was no longer just visiting. She was coming closer. In the weeks that followed, the village of Otu began to whisper. At first, it was small things. Tari no longer joined the morning gatherings at the riverbank. He no longer shared his catch, no longer laughed with the other fishermen. His nets, unlike theirs, were always full. His wife wore a new wrapper of foreign cloth. His children chewed on imported sweets that no trader remembered selling. The villagers were uneasy. The elders spoke in hushed tones around the fire. "The river has chosen him," one muttered. "No," said another. "He has chosen the river." They began to speak of an old tale, of a man once seduced by a water goddess who vanished beneath the tide, leaving only a hollowed-out canoe behind. Some believed Tari was next, but the woman who noticed the change most deeply was Tari's wife, Oma. Though she had recovered from her illness, her husband had grown distant. He no longer met her gaze. He spoke in half-sentences, always distracted, eyes darting toward the river even during meals. One morning, she found him murmuring to a mirror that was not his own, lips barely moving. When she reached for it, he snapped. "Don't touch that!" he shouted, voice sharp and foreign to her. That night, she left their hut quietly and walked to the home of Mama Ibiye, the village priestess. An old, sharp-eyed woman who never married and spoke more with spirits than with people. Mama Ibiye had lived through floods, plagues, and 3 village chiefs. She was feared and respected. Oma told her everything. Mama Ibiye lit a bowl of herbs and stared into the smoke. "He is marked," she said after a long silence. "The water has tasted him. The mirror is not a gift. It is a doorway." She warned Oma that Tari's soul was drifting between worlds, his will being slowly dissolved in the tides of Mami Wata's realm. If nothing was done, he would be lost to the river forever. "And when the goddess takes," Mama Ibiye added gravely, "she does not stop at one offering." Meanwhile, back at home, Tari stood barefoot at the river's edge, clutching the mirror close to his chest. The moon was high. The water glittered unnaturally, curling into strange patterns that seemed to whisper his name. Then she rose again. Mami Wata. This time, she did not speak softly. She sang, a low, haunting melody that stirred the wind and sent ripples across the surface of the water. Her eyes glowed brighter than before. She held out her hand. "Come," she said. "Come below. Your life on land is small, but beneath the surface, you will rule. I will crown you." Behind her, the water parted, and Tari saw a vision. A city of coral and pearl. People with silver eyes dancing in silence. Drums beating beneath waves. Thrones made of shells. His name chanted by unseen mouths. "But first," she said, her voice now cool and commanding, "a token." She held out a bundle of silk. When Tari unwrapped it, his blood turned cold. Inside was a miniature boat carved from driftwood with a single figure inside. A child, unmistakably carved to resemble his firstborn son. "One gift for another," she whispered. "At the next new moon, return here. Bring him, place him on the water, and the mirror shall open forever." Tari fell to his knees. His breath caught. He looked into her eyes and saw beauty and terror all at once. "You promised me your heart," she said. "Your family is part of it." Then, she sank back beneath the waves. Tari remained on the shore until morning, trembling. The days that followed were filled with silence. He could not eat. He could not look at his son without hearing Mami Wata's song. He was caught between desire and duty, between the mortal world and the deep. And with each passing hour, the mirror's surface grew darker, as if counting down to the night of the new moon. The night of the new moon arrived, and with it, the air over Otu thickened. Not a single breeze stirred the trees. The birds had gone quiet. Even the insects that usually buzz through the marshland seemed to pause, as if holding their breath. Tari stood at the riverbank barefoot, holding his son wrapped in a cloth sling across his chest. The child, no more than 6, slept quietly, innocent, unaware. In his other hand, Tari clutched the mirror. Its surface was no longer reflective. It pulsed with a dull blue light, like a living thing, calling to him. The water before him shimmered unnaturally, the same patterns swirling, hypnotic, seductive. He stepped into the river slowly, up to his knees, heart pounding, torn between panic and longing. He remembered Mami Wata's words. Place him on the water. The mirror shall open. Your throne awaits. The moonless sky offered no light, but the water glowed faintly, eerily, beckoning him deeper. Just as Tari reached to lower his son into the water, he heard a voice behind him, sharp, trembling, and filled with heartbreak. "Tari, what are you doing?" It was Oma, his wife. She stood at the edge of the trees, flanked by Mama Ibie and a group of villagers holding palm torches. Their light lit up the trees, and shadows danced on the banks. Oma was barefoot, her wrapper soaked at the hem. She had followed him silently, praying she was wrong. Now she saw the truth. "That is our child, Tari, our son. Look at him." "You don't understand," Tari muttered, shaking, eyes wide. "She'll give us everything. We'll never suffer again. She promised." "She is not of our world," Mama Ibie shouted, stepping forward and raising a calabash filled with white chalk and sacred herbs. "You are being drowned in desire." The wind howled. The river began to churn. The sky cracked with thunder, though no storm had been forecast. Then, from the center of the water, Mami Wata rose, not as a vision, not a whisper, but in her full glory. Her form towered above them, rising from the river like a column of silk in storm. Her eyes glowed silver. Her golden jewelry clinked as the wind twisted around her. Her hair floated as if underwater, but her face was no longer gentle. It was furious. "You dare defy me, Tari!" she thundered. "After all I have given you?" The water crashed around her feet. The trees on the riverbank bent backward as if pushed by an unseen force. The villagers dropped to their knees, terrified. Tari stood frozen, caught between her fury and his wife's tearful gaze. "You said I would be king," he whispered to the goddess, voice shaking. "Kings do not tremble before duty," she hissed. "You accepted my gifts. You fed your family with my blessings. Now pay your debt." She raised her hand, and the river rose with it. The child stirred in Tari's arms, beginning to cry. Suddenly, Mama Ibie flung the calabash to the ground, shattering it. White chalk burst into the air like smoke, forming a circle around Tari. She began to chant in an ancient tongue, calling on the spirits of the land to sever the bond, to anchor Tari's soul back to earth. The river screamed. Mami Wata shrieked in rage, her beauty twisting into something monstrous, eyes like whirlpools, mouth stretching into shadow. The mirror in Tari's hand burned with heat, smoke rising from its edges. In one desperate motion, Tari hurled the mirror into the river. It shattered on impact. A sound like glass and thunder rolled across the water. The light vanished. The wind died. Mami Wata froze, her glowing eyes fixed on Tari with chilling calm. "You may reject me," she said in a voice that seemed to echo from deep beneath the earth, "but none who see me go unchanged." Then she disappeared. The river calmed instantly, as if nothing had happened. The night resumed its silence, and Tari collapsed to his knees, holding his son close as tears ran down his cheeks. The next morning, the sun rose gently over Otu Creek. Tari awoke in his hut, lying beside his wife and children. He was alive. The mirror was gone. But something had changed. His hair had turned gray, streaked with white as though aged overnight. And when he looked at the world, he saw nothing. His eyes, once bright, now pale and unseeing. He was blind, a quiet sacrifice for the debts he had tried to repay. Yet he smiled, for he had chosen his family. He had returned from the edge of another world. Years passed in the sleepy riverside village of Otu, and with them, the legend of Tari, the fisherman, grew. He now lived a quiet, humble life, gray-haired, blind, and slow of step. He could no longer fish the river, but each evening he would sit near its bank, telling stories to the children, gathered around his wooden stool. He never mentioned the name of Mami Wata directly, but the story of a man who reached too far into the river's secret heart, only to return altered, was passed from mouth to mouth, carried by winds, whispered in marketplaces, etched into memory. "I have seen the water's true face," Tari would say softly, and it sees through desire. Though his sight was gone, his words were vivid, describing underwater kingdoms, silver-eyed queens, and mirrors that showed not what we are, but what we want, and how dangerous that can be. Mami Wata is one of the most enigmatic and widely venerated spirits across West and Central Africa, particularly in coastal regions like the Niger Delta. She is often depicted as a beautiful mermaid or water spirit with human features above and the tail of a fish below. Sometimes she carries a mirror, combs her long black hair, or is surrounded by riches, gold, jewelry, silk. Her beauty is unparalleled, her charm irresistible, but beneath the beauty lies danger and duality. She is goddess of both wealth and temptation, healing and destruction. Like the ocean, she gives, but also takes. In the story of Tari, she represents the seductive power of unchecked desire, the promise of more, the hunger for escape, the belief that what is beyond the human world might solve human suffering. But her gifts come with spiritual costs, and those who accept them must be prepared to give something in return. The mirror of desire that Tari pulled from the water is a symbol with deep roots. In many African traditions, mirrors are not just for reflection, they are gateways between realms. To look into one is to open a conversation between the spirit world and the human soul. In this tale, the mirror doesn't show Tari his reflection. Instead, it shows him his deepest hunger, wealth, healing, freedom from struggle. But instead of confronting that hunger, he gives into it, and in return, he almost loses everything. Across Africa and the African diaspora, Mami Wata is honored through rituals, offerings, dance, and music. Her worship blends elements of African spirituality with Indian and European imagery, especially in the colonial era when foreign goods like mirrors, perfumes, and silk were rare and highly prized. She's a hybrid spirit, a symbol of cultural fluidity, the push and pull between modernity and tradition, the seen and unseen. In today's world, she still speaks to those living in dual realities, especially those navigating the pressures of survival, wealth, and spiritual identity. The tale of the fisherman and the mirror of desire reminds us, not all gifts are blessings, not all desires should be chased, and not all doors should be opened. What is easy to gain may be even easier to lose. Tari's story is a warning and a reflection of the choices we all face. So next time you see the water glisten or a strange object gleam where it should not, remember, the river always watches, and it never forgets a debt. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more myths from African mythology, like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Which African myth or deity would you like me to cover next? Was it the power of Mami Wata that fascinated you, or the tragedy of Tari's choice? Let's keep our roots alive, one story at a time.